The council chamber felt different when it reconvened 3 days later. The soft lights in the crystal walls seemed dimmer and many of the seats were empty. Word had spread through the galactic networks about the Earth situation, and some species had decided they did not want to hear more details. Deho floated at the center of the great dome, his smoky form more solid than usual. This meant he was focused and possibly angry. Around him, the remaining council members sat in their various ways, some in chairs, others floating, a few hanging upside down. Boram had brought several devices with her this time. They hummed quietly and projected streams of data into the air around her starlight body. As the head of the scientific collective, she was determined to understand what had happened on Earth. "Ambassador Hyunwoo," she said as the Zalari took his place in the center of the room, "we need to understand this planet better. Show us the environmental data." Hyunwoo activated his holographic projectors again. The image of Earth appeared, but this time it was covered with numbers and charts. Red warnings flashed in several places. "The planet orbits a yellow star at a distance that should make it suitable for life," Hyunwoo began. "But the reality is much more complex. The planet's axial tilt causes extreme seasonal variations. In some regions, the temperature can change by 40 degrees between seasons." Young-soo clicked his mandibles nervously. His people came from a world where the temperature never changed by more than 2 degrees. How do any life forms survive such extremes? The native species have developed what they call adaptation, Hyunwoo explained. They change their behavior and even their body functions based on the season. In cold periods, they add layers of material to their bodies. In hot periods, they remove these layers and produce water from their skin. The hologram zoomed in to show Earth's surface. Mountains reached high into the atmosphere, while deep valleys cut through the land. Vast oceans covered most of the surface with waves that looked violent even from space. "The topography is unstable," Hyunwoo continued. "The planet's crust moves constantly. Mountains grow and fall. The ground shakes regularly. Hot liquid rock comes up from underground, and yet humans build their settlements in these dangerous areas." Yoonji's silver bark was turning darker as she processed this information. "Are you saying they deliberately live in dangerous places?" "Yes. Some of their largest settlements are built next to active volcanic regions. Others are in areas that flood regularly. They seem to consider the danger acceptable because these locations provide other benefits." Minho's musical voice was strained when he spoke. "What kind of benefits could be worth such risks?" "Rich soil for growing food, access to mineral resources, strategic defensive positions." Hyunwoo paused. "They appear to weigh risk against reward in ways that most species would consider irrational." Boram gestured with one of her starlight appendages, and the hologram changed to show biological data. "Tell us about the humans themselves. What kind of life form evolves on such a world?" The display now showed a human figure with detailed anatomical information scrolling beside it. The council members stared in growing amazement at what they saw. They are bipedal mammals weighing between 40 and 120 kilograms. They have redundant organ systems, 2 kidneys, 2 lungs, backup circulation routes. They can survive losing up to 40% of their blood volume. Shocked gasps came from around the chamber. Most galactic species would die from losing 10% of their vital fluids. Their skeletal system is designed to handle impacts, Hyunwoo continued. Their bones can bend without breaking and will repair themselves if damaged. Their skin forms protective barriers over wounds automatically. "This sounds like a species designed for warfare," Deho observed quietly. "It gets worse," Hyunwoo said. "They have a chemical response system they call adrenaline. When threatened, their bodies release substances that make them stronger, faster, and less sensitive to pain. Instead of fleeing from danger like logical beings, they often become more dangerous themselves." The hologram showed a human brain with areas highlighted in different colors. Their nervous system is designed to function under extreme stress. They can continue operating effectively even when injured or exhausted. Some humans have been observed fighting for hours after receiving wounds that would incapacitate most species. Young-soo was clicking his mandibles rapidly now. "Are they naturally aggressive? Is this why they fought so hard?" "We do not believe so," Hyunwoo replied. "Our observations suggest they are normally social creatures who cooperate well within groups. But when threatened, especially when their offspring or communities are in danger, they become extremely difficult to control." Boram brought up new data on her devices. "What about their technology? You said they were primitive." Their individual devices are simple compared to ours, Hyunwoo admitted. But they use them in unexpected ways. They turn farming equipment into weapons. They use their communication networks to coordinate attacks across vast distances. They even weaponize their entertainment systems. Entertainment systems? Hunji asked. They have devices for recreational activities, games, music, visual stories. But they modified these to disrupt our sensors and communications. Their children's toys were turned into surveillance devices. The hologram changed to show human settlements. The council members could see cities built in impossible places, on mountainsides, in swamplands, in frozen wastelands, even on artificial islands in the middle of oceans. They live everywhere on the planet, Hyunwoo explained, from the frozen poles to the hottest deserts. They have settlements underwater and high in the mountains where the air is too thin for most species to breathe. How is this possible? Minho asked. They modify their environment to suit them, and they modify themselves to suit the environment. They wear artificial skins in cold areas and cooling devices in hot areas. They carry breathing apparatus when needed. They even alter their food to survive in different conditions. Daeho's smoky form rippled with what might have been concern. Tell us about their social structure. How are they organized? This is perhaps the most confusing aspect, Hyunwoo said. They have over 6,000 different languages and thousands of separate governmental systems. By all logical analysis, they should be constantly at war with each other. Are they not? Boram asked. They do fight among themselves, but when faced with an external threat, they cooperate with remarkable efficiency. Within days of our invasion, groups that had been enemies for generations were working together against us. The hologram now showed a map of Earth with thousands of colored dots, representing different human cultures and nations. They have different belief systems, different values, different ways of organizing their societies. Yet they share certain common traits that seem to transcend these differences, such as, Yoonji prompted, stubbornness, Hyunwoo said immediately. They do not give up easily. Also curiosity. They investigate everything, even dangerous things. They show remarkable loyalty to their groups and incredible creativity in solving problems. Young-soo was studying the data streams. How did they discover your weaknesses so quickly? They learn by trial and error very rapidly. When one approach failed, they tried another. When we adapted to their tactics, they changed again. Our soldiers reported that humans would attack the same target repeatedly, using different methods each time, until they found one that worked. And they shared this information? Instantly. Their communication networks are primitive but effective. When one group discovered a successful technique, all other groups knew about it within hours. Boram highlighted something in her data. What about their physical capabilities? How do they compare to your soldiers? Hyunwoo's crystal body dimmed. Individual humans are weaker than Zalari warriors. But they work in groups, they use tools effectively, and they know their environment better than we could learn in years of study. Give us an example, Daeho requested. One incident involved a single human female named So Young. Our sensors detected her in an abandoned building. A squad of 12 warriors went to capture her. She had trapped the entire structure. When our soldiers entered, she brought the building down on top of all of them. 12 trained warriors defeated by one primitive. She did not survive either, Hyunwoo said quickly. But she eliminated an entire squad with planning, local materials, and a willingness to sacrifice herself. This pattern repeated thousands of times across the planet. The chamber was quiet as the council members absorbed this information. Finally, Minho spoke. What is the current situation on Earth? We maintain control of major population centers, but resistance continues in rural areas. Human fighters appear and disappear like spirits. They strike at our supply lines and retreat into terrain where our equipment fails. Our soldiers cannot pursue effectively because the environment is too harsh for extended operations. Your equipment fails, Boram asked sharply. Earth's atmosphere is more corrosive than expected. The moisture damages our electronics. Temperature fluctuations cause metal fatigue, and there are microscopic life forms that seem to deliberately attack our materials. Daeho floated closer to the center of the chamber. Ambassador, are you telling us that the planet itself is fighting your occupation? The abandoned subway tunnel under Seoul was dark and cold, but Jiwoo had grown used to the darkness. She crouched next to a makeshift radio, listening to reports from resistance cells across the globe. The green glow from her screen lit up her face, showing the determination that had kept her alive for 3 months since the invasion began. Phoenix Base. This is Mountain Eagle, came a scratchy voice through the static. Package delivered. The lizards won't be using that supply depot anymore. Jiwoo smiled grimly. Mountain Eagle was the code name for Taemin's unit operating in the mountains north of the city. They had been hitting Zalari supply lines for weeks using the rough terrain that the aliens' vehicles could not handle. Good work, Mountain Eagle. What's your status? All birds in the nest. Minor scratches only. Their equipment still can't handle the cold up here. Found 3 of their vehicles abandoned after the last storm. This was becoming a pattern. The Zalari technology worked perfectly in the controlled environment of their ships, but Earth's weather was destroying their equipment faster than they could replace it. Their vehicles overheated in summer and froze solid in winter. Their weapons jammed in humidity and their sensors failed in dust storms. A new voice crackled through the radio. Phoenix Base, this is Ocean Song. Jiwoo recognized the voice of Captain Hongdo, leading a group of former naval officers who were using fishing boats and submarines to attack Zalari supply ships. Go ahead, Ocean Song. We have interesting news. The fishheads tried to establish an underwater base in Busan Harbor. It lasted exactly 4 days before they abandoned it. What happened? Turns out their breathing apparatus wasn't designed for our ocean water. The salt corroded their equipment and something in the water made their soldiers sick. They retreated to their orbital platforms after losing half their construction crew. Jiwoo shook her head in amazement. Every week brought new stories of Zalari failures to adapt to Earth's environment. They had expected to conquer a normal world with controlled conditions. Instead, they found a planet that seemed designed to kill anything that did not belong there. Heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnel, and Jiwoo reached for her weapon before recognizing the approach pattern. 3 short steps, pause, 2 long steps. It was So Young, returning from her latest scouting mission. The scientist emerged from the shadows carrying a backpack full of salvaged Zalari equipment. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and she had a fresh bandage on her arm, but her eyes were bright with excitement. Jiwoo, you need to see this, she said, dumping the contents of her pack onto a makeshift table. Pieces of alien technology scattered across the surface, some still sparking with residual energy. More broken equipment? Jiwoo asked. Not broken, corroded. So Young picked up what looked like a communication device. Look at these connection points. See how the metal has turned green? That's not battle damage. That's chemical reaction. Jiwoo examined the device. The metal components were indeed covered with a green substance that looked almost like rust. Chemical reaction to what? To our air, to our water, to our environment. So Young's voice was getting more excited. I've been analyzing equipment from all over the city. The same pattern appears everywhere. Their technology is literally being eaten by our atmosphere. She pulled out a tablet and showed Jiwoo a series of photographs. Each one showed Zalari equipment in various stages of corrosion. Weapons with barrels clogged by some kind of growth, vehicles with electronics that had turned to green slime, communication arrays covered in what looked like fungus. It's not just corrosion, So Young continued. I found microorganisms growing on their equipment. Bacteria and fungi that our planet developed over millions of years. They break down materials that don't belong here. You mean Earth is defending itself? In a way, yes. The aliens designed their technology for sterile space environments. They never expected to deal with a biosphere that actively attacks foreign materials. The radio crackled to life again. Phoenix Base, this is Desert Wind. Jiwoo recognized the voice of Major Kyung-ho leading a group in the Australian outback. Go ahead, Desert Wind. The lizards tried to establish a mining operation in the desert. Lasted 2 weeks before they gave up. The sand got into everything. Their equipment overheated during the day and the electronics failed during cold nights. Half their workers got sick from what our medics think was dehydration. Dehydration? Turns out they need much more water than humans do and they can't sweat to cool down. The desert heat was literally cooking them inside their environmental suits. So Young was nodding enthusiastically. That matches what I've been observing in the city. The Zalari soldiers wear full environmental suits at all times, but they're still getting sick. Respiratory problems, skin irritation, digestive issues. From what? From living here. From breathing our air, drinking our water, eating food grown in our soil. Their bodies aren't designed for Earth's biosphere. What's normal for us is toxic to them. Jiwoo thought about this information. How toxic? I've been tracking the medical evacuations from the Zalari Command Center. They're sending soldiers back to their ships every day for treatment, and based on the pattern of flights, I think some of them aren't getting better. A new voice joined the radio conversation. Phoenix Base, this is Stormfront. This was Chen Ho operating near the coast where typhoons had been particularly severe this season. The Fishheads had a supply convoy caught in yesterday's storm. We found the wreckage this morning. Looks like their vehicles can't handle high winds. The storm turned their own trucks into weapons against them. Jiwoo was starting to see the bigger picture. The Zalari had conquered hundreds of worlds, but those worlds had probably been more like their home environment. Stable temperatures, controlled atmospheres, predictable conditions. Earth was chaos by comparison. So young, she said. How long can they keep this up? The scientist consulted her tablet. Based on their equipment failure rate and medical evacuation data, I estimate they're losing operational capacity at about 5% per month. At this rate, they'll be unable to maintain effective occupation within 2 years. 2 years is a long time, but it's not forever, and that's assuming they can maintain their current supply lines. If we keep hitting their supply depots, the radio interrupted her thoughts. All stations, this is White Tiger. Everyone in the Resistance knew that call sign. It belonged to General Park Woo-jin, the highest-ranking military officer to survive the initial invasion. His voice carried the authority of someone who had been fighting wars longer than most of the Resistance fighters had been alive. I have an update from our friends monitoring the Lizard Command. Frequencies, he continued. They're having trouble with more than just our environment. Their soldiers are reporting psychological problems. What kind of problems? Jiwoo asked. Homesickness, depression, anxiety. Turns out living on a world where everything is trying to kill you takes a mental toll, even on alien soldiers. Their medical staff is prescribing mood enhancers and sending people home for psychological treatment. So Young looked up from her equipment analysis. That makes sense. Humans evolved here, so we're psychologically adapted to living with constant low-level danger. It's normal for us. For them, it must be like living in a horror story. There's more, General Park continued. Intelligence reports suggest they're having supply problems. Replacement equipment is taking longer to arrive, and when it does, it's often the wrong specifications for Earth conditions. Jiwoo felt a surge of hope. Are you saying they might give up? I'm saying they're learning that conquering a world and holding it are two different things. They expected to take over a compliant population on a comfortable planet. Instead, they found a species that won't quit living on a world that won't let them stay. The radio fell silent as resistance fighters across the globe absorbed this information. After months of fighting what seemed like an impossible enemy, they were beginning to see cracks in the alien occupation. Taemin's voice came back over the radio. Phoenix Base, we're seeing something strange up here in the mountains. The lizards abandoned a whole outpost yesterday, but there was no battle. The buildings are intact, but all the personnel are gone. Any idea why? Local villagers say the aliens were getting sicker and sicker. Some of them couldn't even walk by the end. The medics think it was altitude sickness, but worse, like their bodies just couldn't adapt to the thin air and low oxygen. So Young was making notes rapidly. High-altitude adaptation is something humans developed over thousands of generations. Of course, aliens from a different world wouldn't have that capability. Jiwoo looked around the tunnel at her fellow resistance fighters. They were tired, hungry, and far from home, but they were still here, still fighting, still surviving in conditions that were apparently killing their enemies. Listen up, everyone, she said into the radio. We're going to change our strategy. Instead of just hitting their supply lines, we're going to help Earth do what it does naturally. What do you mean? Several voices asked at once. We're going to make this planet as hostile as possible for our uninvited guests. Every storm, every temperature change, every environmental challenge, we're going to make sure they get the full experience of living on Earth. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened under very different circumstances than any meeting in the organization's long history. Red warning lights pulsed through the crystal walls of the Great Chamber, and many seats remained empty. Several species had withdrawn their representatives after receiving the preliminary reports about Earth. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood in the center of the chamber, but he looked nothing like the confident diplomat who had announced Earth's conquest 6 months earlier. His crystal body was cracked in several places, and the light that normally flowed through him was dim and flickering. He had spent too much time in Earth's atmosphere, and it was killing him slowly. Daeho's smoky form was more solid than anyone had ever seen it, which meant he was very angry or very worried. Possibly both. Ambassador, your latest report makes disturbing reading. Please summarize the current situation for those council members who chose to attend. Hyunwoo activated his holographic projectors with obvious effort. The image of Earth appeared, but now it was covered with red warning symbols and failure indicators. Honored council members, after 6 months of occupation, we have been forced to acknowledge that Earth presents challenges we did not anticipate. Challenges? Boram's starlight body was pulsing rapidly with agitation. You've lost 80% of your ground forces. Your equipment failure rate is approaching total collapse. And according to our intelligence services, human resistance is stronger now than when you first invaded. The environment is more hostile than our surveys indicated, Hyunwoo said defensively, and the native species is proving remarkably difficult to control. Young-soo clicked his mandibles in what his species used instead of laughter, but there was no humor in the sound. Difficult to control? Ambassador, they're hunting your soldiers for sport. The hologram changed to show casualty reports and equipment losses. The numbers were staggering. No Zalari military operation in recorded history had resulted in such catastrophic losses. We need to understand what went wrong, Daeho said. Council member Young-soo, what did your scientific expedition discover? Young-soo stood on his 6 legs and activated his own data displays. His report was even more disturbing than Hyunwoo's casualty numbers. Honored Prime, Earth is not the Class 7 habitable world that initial surveys suggested. It is a Class 12 death world. Shocked gasps came from around the chamber. Class 12 death worlds were theoretical. Most galactic scientists believed such hostile environments could not support complex life. Explain, Daeho commanded. The planet's biosphere is actively hostile to non-native life forms. The atmosphere contains corrosive agents that destroy most materials within weeks. The surface is subjected to violent weather phenomena that can kill unprotected beings in minutes. The gravity is strong enough to crush the bones of most species. Young-soo's display showed a 3-dimensional model of Earth's biosphere. It looked like a complex web of interconnected systems, all designed to break down and recycle organic matter as quickly as possible. But most disturbing of all, he continued, the planet is inhabited by a species that has not only survived in this environment, but has evolved to thrive in it. Humans are not just adapted to death world conditions, they are the product of death world evolution. Boram leaned forward in her floating chair. What does that mean exactly? It means they possess capabilities that most galactic species would consider impossible. Their bodies can survive injuries that would kill any of us. They can function in temperature ranges that would shut down our biological systems. They can breathe air that would poison most life forms and drink water that would corrode our internal organs. The display changed to show human anatomy, but this time the focus was on capabilities rather than basic structure. The council members stared in growing horror at what they saw. They have redundant organ systems, reinforced skeletal structure, and a circulatory system that can reroute around damaged areas. Their nervous system is designed to function under extreme stress, and their brain chemistry actually improves their physical performance when threatened. You're describing a species engineered for warfare, Yoonji observed, her silver bark turning darker with concern. Not engineered, Young-soo corrected. Evolved. Over millions of years, Earth killed off every life form that was not strong enough, smart enough, or stubborn enough to survive its hostility. What remained was a species of survivors. Minho's musical voice was strained when he spoke. Surely they must have some weaknesses. Their primary weakness is that they require the hostile environment they evolved in. Remove them from Earth and they become much more manageable. But as long as they remain on their homeworld, they have every advantage. Daeho gestured for the display to change. Show us the psychological profile. Young-soo's data shifted to show behavioral patterns and psychological analysis. This may be the most disturbing aspect of all. Humans do not just tolerate hostile conditions, they seek them out. The hologram showed videos of humans engaged in various activities. Council members watched in amazement as the primitive beings deliberately exposed themselves to dangerous situations. They climb mountains where the air is too thin to breathe properly. They dive into deep water where the pressure should crush them. They expose themselves to freezing temperatures and burning heat for entertainment. Some of them deliberately consume toxins that would kill most species, calling it alcohol, and treating it as a social activity. They poison themselves for fun? Boram asked in disbelief, regularly, and they have festivals celebrating their ability to survive dangers. They tell stories about overcoming impossible odds. Their entertainment media focuses on scenarios where everything goes wrong, and they must find ways to survive anyway. The display showed human art, literature, and entertainment. Every example seemed to involve humans facing terrible odds and refusing to give up. They have mythologized struggle, Young-Soo continued. Their religions often involve suffering as a path to strength. Their heroes are beings who faced impossible challenges and won through determination, rather than superior technology. What about their social structure? Daeho asked. This is perhaps the most remarkable aspect. Despite having thousands of different languages, cultures, and governmental systems, they unite instantly when faced with external threats. Our invasion caused formerly hostile human groups to immediately begin cooperating against us. The hologram showed a map of Earth with communication patterns highlighted. Thousands of different human groups were shown sharing information, resources, and tactics in real time. They have a concept they call species loyalty that transcends all other divisions. When threatened by outsiders, they consider all humans to be family, regardless of previous conflicts. Yunwoo spoke up from the center of the chamber. This explains why our standard occupation techniques failed. We expected to exploit divisions between different human groups. Instead, our presence created unity where none had existed before. There's more, Young-Soo said. Humans do not just unite against external threats. They learn from them. Every technique we used against them was studied, understood, and countered within days. They adapted to our technology faster than we could adapt to their environment. Boram was studying her own data streams. What about their technology? You said they were primitive. Their individual devices are simple compared to ours, but they use them in ways we never anticipated. They modify everything to serve multiple purposes. A communication device becomes a navigation tool and a weapon. A transportation vehicle becomes a mobile shelter and a battering ram. Improvisation, Daeho said quietly. Constant improvisation. They seem incapable of using any device exactly as it was designed. They always find ways to make it do more than intended. The chamber fell silent as the council members absorbed this information. Finally, Eunji spoke. Council member Young-Soo, in your professional opinion, can Earth be successfully occupied? Young-Soo's mandibles clicked slowly as he considered his answer. Not by any species currently known to galactic civilization. The environmental challenges alone would defeat most occupation forces. Combined with active resistance from a species evolved for survival warfare, I would classify successful occupation as impossible. What about bombardment from orbit? Minho asked. Surely they cannot survive if we simply destroy the planet's surface. Two problems with that approach, Young-Soo replied. First, humans have built extensive underground facilities. Many could survive surface bombardment for years. Second, and more importantly, destroying Earth would eliminate the very resources that made conquest valuable in the first place. So we cannot take the planet, and we cannot use it if we destroy it, Daeho summarized. Correct. Honored Prime. What do you recommend? Young-Soo looked around the chamber at the various species represented. Most of them looked worried or frightened. A few looked curious, but even they seemed disturbed by the implications of his report. Complete withdrawal, he said finally. Classify Earth as a quarantine zone and prohibit all contact. The risk to galactic civilization is too great. Risk? Boram asked. What kind of risk? Think about it, Young-Soo said. We have just discovered a species that evolved on a death world. They are naturally resistant to most environmental hazards. Admiral Junho stood on the bridge of the Zalari flagship, staring down at the blue and green world that had destroyed his career and killed so many of his soldiers. Earth looked peaceful from orbit, but he knew better now. That beautiful planet was a trap, and his people had walked right into it. The medical reports on his desk told the story in stark numbers. 73% of his remaining ground forces were suffering from various illnesses caused by Earth's environment. Equipment failure rates had reached 96%. And the humans were still fighting. Admiral, his communications officer called out. We're receiving another distress signal from Base 7. Junho closed his eyes. Base 7 was their last major ground installation, built in what their surveys had identified as a low-risk temperate zone. It had seemed like the safest place on the planet to establish a permanent presence. Put it through, he said, reluctantly. The voice that came through the speakers was weak and filled with static. Flagship, this is Commander Hye-Jin at Base 7. We need immediate medical evacuation for 60% of our personnel. The local weather is killing us. Junho looked at the weather report on his screen. To human eyes, it was a mild spring day with light rain and temperatures in the comfortable range. To Zalari soldiers, it was a toxic nightmare. What's your status, Commander? The rain is getting through our environmental seals. Our equipment is corroding faster than we can repair it. And the humans, Admiral, they're not attacking us anymore. They're just watching us die. Explain. They surround our perimeter every day, but they don't shoot. They just sit there in the rain, comfortable as can be, watching our soldiers collapse from environmental poisoning. Some of them are even bringing food and eating while they watch. Junho felt a wave of humiliation wash over him. The humans were treating his elite soldiers like a form of entertainment. They had turned the Zalari occupation into a spectacle. How long can you maintain your position? Maybe 2 days, Admiral. After that, we'll either need full medical evacuation or... The transmission cut off, replaced by static. Junho's tactical officer looked up from his console. Admiral, we're receiving priority communications from the home fleet. On screen, the image that appeared showed Fleet Marshal Dongwu, Junho's superior and one of the most decorated officers in Zalari history. But like everyone who had spent time in Earth's vicinity, he looked older and weaker than he should. Admiral Junho, the Marshal began without preamble. I have orders from the High Command. You are to begin immediate withdrawal of all Zalari forces from Earth and the Sol system. Junho felt relief and shame in equal measure. Yes, Marshal. What is our official reason for withdrawal? Environmental incompatibility. We are to report that Earth's biosphere presents unacceptable risks to Zalari personnel and equipment, making long-term occupation impractical. And the truth? Marshal Dongwu was quiet for a long moment. The truth is that we attempted to conquer a species of apex predators on their home territory, and we learned why no one had ever conquered them before. The Marshal's image shifted to show reports from across the galaxy. Intelligence indicates that word of our difficulties has spread throughout the galactic community. Several species are questioning Zalari military superiority. Some are even suggesting that humans might pose a threat to galactic civilization. Do they? Admiral, in 6 months of occupation, we have learned more about warfare from humans than we learned in 1,000 years of conquering other species. They don't fight like civilized beings. They fight like forces of nature. Junho thought about the reports he had read. Humans who continued fighting after injuries that would kill most species. Human groups that appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking where they were least expected. Human innovations that turned peaceful objects into weapons of war. What happens now? He asked. Now we leave and we make sure no one else makes the same mistake we did. Earth is being classified as a restricted zone. No galactic species is to make contact with humans under any circumstances. What if they develop space travel? Marshal Dongwu's expression grew grim. Then we hope they remember that we eventually chose to leave their world alone, and they appreciate that decision. The connection ended, leaving Junho alone with his thoughts and his orders. He turned to his communications officer. Send a message to all ground forces. Full withdrawal begins immediately. Priority is on personnel recovery. Leave the equipment if necessary. Sir, what about our strategic materials and installations? Junho looked down at Earth one more time. The humans can have them. Maybe they'll learn something useful from studying our technology. As the withdrawal began, Junho received reports from across the planet. Everywhere the pattern was the same. Zalari forces racing to reach evacuation points while their equipment failed around them and humans watched from safe distances. From Base 7, Commander Haye Jin reported that the humans had actually helped some of her soldiers reach the evacuation zone when their vehicles broke down in the rain. The gesture of assistance felt somehow more insulting than an attack would have been. Admiral, his sensor officer called out, we're detecting movement at the human resistance stronghold in the Korean peninsula. Junho looked at the display, showing the underground tunnels where the human leader Jiwoo had been coordinating resistance activities. What kind of movement? It looks like a celebration, sir. They're bringing out stored food and beverages. Some of them are making music, of course they were celebrating. They had just defeated the most powerful military force in the known galaxy, using nothing but stubbornness and their planet's hostile environment. A new voice came over the communication system. It was speaking in human language, but Junho's translator converted it to Zalari. Zalari fleet, this is Jiwoo of the Earth Defense Forces. We wish you safe travels. Junho stared at the communication panel. The human was actually wishing them well. After months of deadly conflict, she was being polite. Tell her. Junho paused, unsure what to say. Tell her that Earth's warriors fought with honor, and we will not forget the lessons they taught us. The response came back quickly. Jiwoo says she hopes we all learned something valuable, and she wishes for peace between our peoples. Junho almost smiled. Even in victory, the humans were looking toward a peaceful future. It was yet another way they differed from every other species the Zalari had encountered. As the last of his forces reached orbit, Junho received one final report from So Young, the human scientist who had been analyzing Zalari equipment throughout the occupation. Admiral, the human says she has completed her analysis of our technology. She's offering to share her findings in exchange for our star charts and technical manuals. She wants to trade? Yes, sir. She says understanding each other's technology could prevent future conflicts. Junho thought about this request. Sharing Zalari technical knowledge with humans could accelerate their development by centuries. They might achieve interstellar travel within decades instead of the projected 50 to 100 years. But they had already proven they could defeat Zalari forces without advanced technology. And they had shown remarkable restraint in victory, helping wounded enemies and offering peaceful trade agreements. Tell her we will consider her proposal. Have her send her findings to the Council. Let them decide how to respond. As the Zalari fleet prepared to leave Earth's system, Junho took one last look at the planet that had taught his people humility. The blue and green world looked as beautiful and peaceful as ever. Only now he knew the truth. Earth was not a normal world. It was a forge that had spent billions of years creating the most resilient, adaptable, and determined species the galaxy had ever seen. And humans were not a normal species. They were survivors, innovators, and warriors who happened to prefer peace, but were exceptionally good at war when necessary. The final report Junho sent to Zalari High Command was brief. Earth withdrawal complete. Recommend permanent non-interference policy. Humans are not a threat to galactic civilization. They are an evolutionary achievement that deserves respect and caution. Back on Earth, Jiwoo stood on a hilltop near Seoul, watching the alien ships disappear into the star-filled sky. Around her, other resistance fighters were emerging from their hiding places, blinking in the sunlight like creatures awakening from a long hibernation. So what happens now? Taemin asked, joining her on the hilltop. Now we rebuild, Jiwoo said, and we learn. She held up a data pad containing terabytes of information about Zalari technology. So Young had spent months studying alien equipment, and now they had enough information to advance human technology by centuries. Are we going to go after them? Someone asked. Jiwoo shook her head. They left. That's all we wanted. But someday when we're ready, we might visit them. Not as conquerors, but as neighbors. She looked up at the stars, wondering what other species might be out there, and what they might think when they eventually met humans on equal terms. On distant worlds, the Galactic Council was already debating new policies. Earth was officially classified as a quarantine zone. No species was to make contact with humans. No one was to share technology that might accelerate human space development, and absolutely no one was to attempt another invasion. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a vast dome made of living crystal. Lights moved slowly through the walls, casting soft colors across the hundreds of seats where different alien races sat. Some floated in bubbles of gas, others rested on heated rocks, and a few hung from the ceiling like sleeping bats. Ambassador Yunwoo stood at the center of it all. His body was tall and made of what looked like blue crystal, with 4 arms that ended in delicate hands. Light moved through his skin when he was happy or excited. Right now the light was dim and slow, which meant he was trying to stay calm. He looked up at the Council Prime, an ancient being called Daeho who had lived for thousands of years. Daeho's body was like smoke that held its shape, sometimes solid, sometimes see-through. His eyes were the only part that stayed the same, 2 bright points of white light that seemed to see everything. Honored members of the Council, Hyunwoo began, his voice echoing in the Great Hall. I bring news of our latest success. The Zalari Empire has taken control of the 3rd planet in the Sol system. The local name for this world is Earth. A soft murmur went through the hall. It was not unusual for the Zalari to take over new planets. They had conquered over 400 worlds in the past 1,000 years. They were known for being fast and efficient. Most planets fell within days. Daeho's smoky form shifted slightly. Another world added to our great empire. Tell us, Ambassador, how long did this conquest take? Hyunwoo's crystal body flickered. The light inside him moved faster for just a moment. The operation was completed in 3 standard cycles, honored prime. The hall went quiet. 3 cycles was much longer than normal. Most planets were conquered in less than 1 cycle. Some of the council members started whispering to each other in their own languages. Boram, a tall being who looked like she was made of stars, leaned forward in her floating chair. Her people, the Ethereal Collective, were known for asking hard questions. 3 cycles seems unusual, Ambassador. Were there complications? Minor setbacks only, Hyunwoo said quickly. The light in his body was moving much faster now. The native species put up more resistance than expected, but they were primitive. No space travel. No energy weapons. We were successful. Youngsu, whose people looked like giant insects with bright green shells, clicked his mandibles together. This was how his species laughed. Resistance from primitives? How many of our ships did you need? Hyunwoo was quiet for too long. The silence stretched out until everyone in the hall was looking at him. Finally, he spoke in a voice that was barely above a whisper. The entire 7th Fleet. The hall exploded in noise. Beings that could speak made shocked sounds. Others changed colors rapidly. A few started floating higher in the air, which was a sign of distress. The 7th Fleet was huge. It had 300 battleships, 50 support vessels, and over 2 million soldiers. It was the kind of force used to take over entire star systems, not single planets. Daeho raised one smoky hand and the hall became quiet again. Ambassador Hyunwoo, please explain why such a large force was needed against a primitive world. Hyunwoo's crystal body was now flashing with rapid lights, like a broken communication device. The planet was more difficult than our scouts reported. The gravity was higher than expected. The atmosphere was challenging, and the natives they were not what we thought they would be. Minho, whose people were known for being peaceful traders, spoke up. His voice was like music when he talked. What do you mean by challenging? Were they more advanced than your scouts reported? No, Hyunwoo said. They had no technology that could threaten our ships. Their weapons were primitive. Metal projectiles. Chemical explosives. Some of them still used sharp pieces of metal attached to sticks. Then what was the problem? Daeho asked. His voice was patient, but there was something dangerous in it. Hyunwoo looked around the hall at all the different species watching him. They would not surrender. We destroyed their military bases. We took control of their communication systems. We landed our forces in their major population centers, but they kept fighting. All species fight at first, said Yoonji, whose people looked like walking trees with silver bark. They learned that resistance is pointless. These ones did not learn, Hyunwoo said. When we destroyed one group, 2 more appeared. When we captured their leaders, new ones took their place. They fought with anything they could find. They used their own vehicles as bombs. They turned their buildings into traps. Some of them fought with nothing but their bare hands. The hall was quiet again. This was not normal behavior. Most species, when faced with obviously superior technology, chose to surrender and negotiate. It was logical. It saved lives. What about casualties? Boram asked. Hyunwoo's light dimmed almost completely. We lost 67% of our ground forces. The silence that followed was complete. No one moved. No one made a sound. Losing more than half of an invasion force was unheard of. The Zalari were known for efficient conquests with minimal losses. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of most primitive worlds. 67%? Daeho's voice was very quiet. Against primitives with metal weapons? They adapted very quickly, Hyunwoo said. They learned to hide from our sensors. They found ways to jam our communications. They used the planet's weather against us. And they never stopped coming. No matter how many we stopped, more kept attacking. Youngsu's mandibles clicked rapidly. What kind of beings are these humans? They are bipedal mammals, Hyunwoo said. Carbon-based. They breathe oxygen and drink water. They should have been easy to control. Our researchers said they were a young species, barely out of their primitive age. Yet they cost you 2/3 of your invasion force, Daeho observed. The planet helped them, Hyunwoo said quickly. Earth is not like other worlds. The environment is hostile, The weather changes constantly. There are deadly storms that can destroy our equipment. The very air corrodes our metal, and the natives seem to thrive in conditions that would kill most of our soldiers. Yunji leaned forward. Her silver bark was turning darker, which meant she was thinking hard. Tell us about this planet. What makes it so hostile? Hyunwoo activated a holographic display in the center of the hall. A blue and green planet appeared, slowly rotating. It looked beautiful from space, but the data scrolling beside it told a different story. The gravity is 1.7 times galactic standard. The atmospheric pressure would crush the exoskeletons of most species. 71% of the surface is covered with a corrosive liquid that somehow supports life. The temperature varies from -40 degrees to +55 degrees. Shocked sounds came from around the hall. Most civilized worlds had carefully controlled environments. Stable temperature, perfect atmospheric pressure, gentle gravity. The planet experiences violent weather phenomena called storms. Hyunwoo continued. These can include winds that move at over 300 kilometers per hour, electrical discharges that can destroy electronics, and frozen water that falls from the sky. And the humans live in these conditions? Minho asked, his musical voice sounding strained. They do more than live in them, Hyunwoo said. They seem to enjoy them. We observed humans deliberately exposing themselves to dangerous weather for entertainment. They call it sports. Daeho's smoky form was very still. Ambassador, are you telling us that this species has evolved on a world so hostile that they consider dangerous conditions to be fun? Yes, Honored Prime. And they fought your entire 7th Fleet to a standstill? We achieved tactical control of major population centers, Hyunwoo said. But the humans continue to resist. They operate in small groups now. They strike at our supply lines and disappear. Our soldiers cannot pursue them effectively because the environment damages our equipment. The hall was quiet for a long time. Finally, Daeho spoke. Ambassador Hyunwoo, you have given us much to consider. We will need a full report on this species and their world. The council will reconvene when we have more information. As the various species began to file out of the hall, many of them cast worried looks at the hologram of Earth that still rotated in the center of the room. It looked so peaceful from space. But everyone in the hall was beginning to understand that looks could be very deceiving. Hyunwoo remained standing in the center of the hall long after everyone else had left, staring at the image of the blue and green planet that had cost his people so much. For the first time in his long life, he wondered if the Zalari Empire had made a terrible mistake.